Hello and welcome to the Try Talking Sport podcast hosted by me, Joanne Murphy. Whether you are an athlete, adventurer, endurance enthusiast or simply have an interest in sport, you've come to the right place for inspiration, encouragement, motivation and, as always, plenty of entertainment. Well, how are you this week? I'm settling back into life at home after the last few weeks in the sun in Lanzarote. I'm missing the warm sunny weather, but I am certainly looking forward to some cosy days and nights in front of the fire, chilling with a movie or a good book over the festive period. It's been almost impossible to settle back into any semblance of a routine since I've been home, so I'm just going to go with the flow and enjoy the freedom and flexibility that I have between now and Christmas. I have some big plans in the pipeline for 2022, so there'll be plenty of structure, routine and training on the horizon once we hit the new year. More on that over the coming weeks. #watch this space. I worked my last live job of the year last Sunday at the Cycling Connacht Provincial Cyclocross race in Spiddal in Galway, hosted by Gaeltacht CC, a late addition to the diary after having lots of fun in Westport the previous week at the cyclocross race hosted by Westport Covey Wheelers and the Building for the Future event hosted by Cycling Connacht, where a great gathering of passionate cyclists came together to learn, educate, inspire and connect for the future development of cycling in the province and beyond. It's been some year. The first half was pretty quiet on the announcing front, and then once I got going in July, the past few months and especially the last 3 months have been a complete whirlwind of announcing adventures filled with opportunities for which I am very grateful. If this pandemic has taught me anything, it is not to take anything for granted and to seize every opportunity that is offered, even if it scares the crap out of you or puts you way outside of your comfort zone. Before I introduce our guest for this week, a quick shout out to our 300 plus participants who've taken on our December fitness challenge. We are on the final stretch with the challenge now. If you are interested in finding out more or jumping on board, pop over to trytalkingsport.com to sign up. Also, keep an eye on our social media for a host of prizes being given away as part of our Christmas Cracker promotion. There are a range of race entries, products and vouchers to be won right through this month, so be sure to check it out. I mentioned a minute ago about taking every opportunity that is offered, even if it pushes you outside your comfort zone, and in this episode I did both. With huge thanks to Tommy Evans and Pádraig Murray, they lined up Irish cycling legend Nicolas Roche as the guest for this week's podcast, which was a huge, and I mean huge, opportunity. Now, you might wonder how that pushed me outside of my comfort zone, but it did. Whilst I'm a big fan and have followed Nico's career and been in tune with his cycling and success generally, professional cycling is not something that I can say I am an expert on. In fact, I'm more of a jack of all trades, master, or in this case, madam of none. So stepping up to interview Nico Roche with his decorated, successful and very public career in sport was definitely an exciting but slightly nerve-wracking prospect. I needn't have worried. Nico was a gem to interview, and this show is one that everyone can relate to, whether you have an interest in cycling or not. With a professional career in cycling spanning 17 years, Nicolas Roche has enjoyed a successful career on the world stage with some of the best and biggest teams and the best riders in the sport of cycling. The 4-time Olympian and former Irish national champion has competed for Ireland 7 times at the Road World Championships. He won 2 stages of the Vuelta España and has also had a 5th and 6th finish overall in the event. He started a total of 24 Grand Tours and has had a total of 65 top 10 finishes in Grand Tour stages during his decorated career in cycling. Based mainly in Monaco, he is the son of one of Ireland's most prolific and accomplished cyclists, Stephen Roche. Nico carved his own way in the sport with natural talent, a tenacious attitude, determination and hard work. He has had an incredible career on 2 wheels and enjoyed lots of success on the bike at home and abroad. In October this year, Nico retired from professional cycling and is now venturing into the next chapter of his career. Since this episode was recorded, Nico has been announced as a participant in this year's Dancing with the Stars in Ireland, ditching his bike for his dancing shoes and the lycra for some glitter, getting his retirement off to a dazzling start. With such a high profile, lots of Nico's life, results and success on the bike has already been documented and aired extensively. In this episode, our 70th of the podcast, we take a road slightly less travelled in getting to know Nico and get an insight to his life, both on and off the bike. This is the last episode before Christmas, so happy Christmas everyone. Thanks for the support and the interest in the podcast. I hope you have plenty of festive fun and enjoy the build up to the big day. Now, go grab a cuppa and enjoy the show. It's a great one. Nicolas Roche, thank you so much for joining me on the podcast. I am totally starstruck and totally fangirling and excited to have you on the show.
Hi, John.
How are you today?
Good. Thank you very much.
I saw you were out cycling, you were up in Wicklow, cycling in the hills, the ice and having coffee.
Yeah, that resumes this morning. All right. Yeah, I was up in the Wicklows, made an attempt Literally after a couple of seconds after I did that video, about 200 meters later, there was a really big ice patch. And I said, all right, that's it. It's a sign. I'll turn around. And then shot down into Enniskerry and had a little coffee and scone, which was nice and tasty. And then just kind of cycled my way back to Dundrum.
So I'm really excited to hear that you had coffee on a scone, because the only reason I cycle is for cake.
Yeah, I can relate to that.
So, Nico, how is retirement going generally? I mean, you're a wet week retired, but you're still training away. I saw you were out running the other day as well. Are you enjoying the downtime and the freedom?
Well, enjoying is a big word. Let's say I've been doing a lot of things. The last 2 months, I've only slept, I think, 6 nights in my apartment in Monaco. I've just been on the go. At the moment, it's about preparing the future, what's coming next. Cycling was a big chunk of my life. And unfortunately, I can't afford just sitting home and waiting for time to click by. So I need to be proactive, and I want to prepare 2022 today and not wait until January when everything has already started. So I was extremely busy pushing a few doors, right, left and center, trying to get stuff done. So as when the new year comes, I can a little bit relax in the spring from the work that I've been doing now. So it's a little bit difficult because, I wish I'd go and, okay, I did have an 8-day holiday, which was amazing because it was, a guilt-free holiday, and I was out. It didn't matter if I slept or didn't sleep or what I ate or what I drank. And even the ice cream just tasted like ice cream, and I had like 100% guilt-free. So it was a short holiday. It's been 2 years I hadn't had a holiday. It was 8 days, but it was more than enough. I lived it to the full, and I came back almost. I was more tired than when I left. But what I want to say is that at least mentally, it was a big mental break, and that felt good. I didn't think about, if I put on 2 kilos now, next week I'll be hard to lose them. I was in the gym every day just to be able to enjoy more the evening. And also, my brand is fitness, and I want to stay fit and be fit. And, I don't want to retire and put on a huge amount of weight. I've put on already enough weight in my opinion. And I'm struggling with seeing my body change. And I'm bulking up. I'm putting a lot of muscle weight. I've been in the gym a lot and doing quite some workouts, but it's changing from a cyclist. I'm becoming more like a man more than a cyclist body. And it is not easy to cope with it, but it's just, I need to stay active also because it keeps my mind going and from going crazy and sitting at home and rethinking. It's still very fresh. So it's still like, did I make the right choice? Yes, no, maybe I could have done a year more. No, I don't want to do a year more. And then I see some photos and I see the snow and the rain is like, nah, I wouldn't do another year of that. And so it's all this kind of mixed feeling. So it's like, I'm living retirement over the last 2 months, really 100K an hour, but enjoying some days. Some days are harder because, like I said, there's also this massive uncertainty because today, I'm not going to say, all right, next year I'm going to be this. I have like 8 or 9 different things that are adding up every weekend. So I'll be doing bits and pieces with Trinity Sport, looking after the mountain bike team, which is, I'm super excited to go and do something like that. I'll be doing bits and pieces with TV, bits and pieces with other companies. I'll be brand ambassador for some of the big brands. So there's like a couple of things clicking together, but I can't say, January I'll be a sports director, or I'll be a manager, or I'll be a TV host, or whatever it is. So all that is kind of exciting and also frightening because it's like, putting a puzzle together and you're trying to get all the pieces to complete the puzzle.
I imagine the way you're explaining it to me is that it's actually quite overwhelming. Like you've gone from the comfort of having, the team environment and probably everything done for you to now being free to just sort out your whole own life. And that it probably can get a little bit overwhelming. It is coming into Christmas as well when things begin to shut down. So a lot of teams and activities will have their plans made. But I'm sure that the brand and the name will open lots of doors for you.
Well, hopefully, I worked hard on that and, keeping a clean image during my career. But, I'm known as kind of the gentleman of the peloton and all that. I was always very sponsor friendly. I was media friendly. Also in the bunch, I have very, very few enemies. So there was always this kind of clean, neat image of me in the peloton. And hopefully that will attract some of the brands. And it has attracted some of the brands. And, I can't wait to already share all the couple of brands that I'll be associated with in January.
Brilliant. You were very active on social media throughout. You are active on social media now, but even during COVID, you were very active with it. You were sharing photos of you Zwifting on your balcony and just, I suppose, allowing people to get a little glimpse of your life. And that's really important for the future now because we see what your life was kind of like. What was COVID like for you, Nico?
COVID was tough. I spent, was it almost 9 to 10 weeks on my own in my apartment. And it was tough. And you know what? The social media was like my window to the world. It was my way of not just talking to the walls. And I had an audience. And also I felt that, it was very, very difficult for a lot of people, and a lot of people were alone, but at least I wasn't alone in a privileged environment. And I had, a goal every day to get on the bike, train, stay fit, get out of COVID, go for the Tour de France, whatever. Where some people were stuck at home, and it was hard for them because they didn't have that thing to look forward when things reopened. And so, I was like, if I give people some kind of motivation, say, keep going, keep going, keep going, is, go for it, do exercise, do whatever, have a glass of wine, cook yourself a nice meal, take time to do things as well for yourself to kind of fill in the day. So it was more like, it was giving in a window of what keeping people busy as well, because everyone had a bit of curiosity, and all you had to do was go on social media or watch Netflix. So that was lockdown for a lot of people, because you just could not get out of your apartment or your house. So in a way, it was like, one, interacting for me with others, and it kept me going from going insane. And two, also, I think, I was getting a lot of support from people saying, Nico, congrats, you get me going. And when I look at you doing your 4 hours on the ergo, it gets me going, and I'm going to do the steps tomorrow when I go running. And it wasn't just about being cyclist, it was just about being active. And, sometimes I'd have a glass of wine and, pop a bottle, Nico. And then suddenly I'd also spend a lot of time responding to a lot of the messages on my DMs. And, I'd have just open to meet new people, chat, and, meet someone who wanted to chat about wine, whiskeys, or just generally diets and food and training. And I would kind of, because I needed to keep busy as well. So all that interaction with kind of me opening up to let's say, a bit more into my intimacy, but also the fact that I felt that I was actually being useful. And that kept me going, because when I was having a hard time, it's like, I need to go today and train, because I know a lot of people are waiting for me to go and train to get them going. And that gave me a little bit more energy.
And I also think as well, during lockdown, doing things like that gives those that are doing it a little bit of a sense of purpose. And a sense of identity as well, and helps with the routine, because a lot of us need routine in our lives to continue to focus on the end goal. Nico, as I mentioned off air before we chatted, there's been lots of interviews, lots of discussion. Your whole career is available for people to see online, to read, to listen to on other podcasts. So I'm going down a very different type of route with you tonight. I'm going to ask you some obscure questions, and going to ask you some questions that maybe you've been asked before. Hopefully some questions you won't have been asked. But the very first question I'm going to ask you is, what sports did you play as a child? And did you ever consider pursuing those sports professionally rather than cycling?
So I was a very hyperactive kid. So I've done a lot of things as a very, very young age. One of the first sports I did was running, because my mom was a runner, and it was easy. I did running, I did judo, I did swimming, didn't like swimming. I even did ice skating in the winter. But ice skating, I was just focused on speed and not really on technique. My only interest was just to go as fast as possible around the ring. So that didn't work out. So I only did 1 year of that. I did running for about 5-6 years, and quite seriously. And I was very good at cross country and at the 400 meters. And then when I was about 10, I started playing soccer, because it was more social, and all my friends from school played soccer. When you was running, it was just always on your own, and okay, you had the training with the guys, but it was just going to races on your own, and it didn't have the same fun. And sometimes when you're 10, 11, you need a bit of fun as well. So I played soccer with my friends in the local club, and then I moved to Ireland when I was 12, again for the third time. And I started playing soccer here as well in Dublin. And at the same time, my dad said, do you want to go to bike race? There's a underage bike race in the Boot Inn in beside the airport. I said, yeah, sure. And I like that. It was the last race of the season. So I said, okay, called Santi and asked him for a bike for next year. So I got my bike for the next year, and kind of played a little bit less soccer, a bit more cycling. And then from there on, my parents decided that most likely we're going to stay in Ireland for longer. So I went to Blackrock College then for that year. And then I had to give up soccer, and I played rugby instead. And from there, I was like, rugby about 5 days a week, and cycling about 2 days a week. Most days I would actually do both. For example, on Wednesdays, I'd have training after school, but also I'd go in the evening and do a couple of hours on the bike too. So they were full on until I tore my cruciate ligament, which also happened to be the moment where my parents eventually decided that we're not going to stay in Ireland and went back to France. And when I moved back to France injured, the rehab was basically just cycling. So I quit all other sports and just went really into cycling, and I got a lot better at cycling. And then that was it. Then I stuck to cycling from there onwards. But one of the other sports that I always say where I felt that I probably had it was rugby. Although I only played 1 year, I picked it up really, really fast and I absolutely fell in love with the sport. And still today, like last week, I went to see the Leinster match here, and I was going to go again now Saturday, but with all these new restrictions and whatever, I just thought I'd play it safe.
And what position did you play in rugby?
I played left wing.
Okay, so it was kind of suited to cycling. You weren't going playing as a forward.
No. I needed to be fast on my feet and stay upright as much as I could.
And while you were playing rugby and cycling, were you a good student at school?
I was, but obviously sport was taking a big chunk of my life. I actually, when I moved to France, actually got a little bit better when rugby wasn't as dominant, and I only had to focus on cycling and school. But there were a couple of years where it was tough, and there was a lot of hard work between school, rugby, and cycling. But like I said, those 2 years, 3 years I was in Ireland, I was a good student but could do better. And then when I went to France, the first year was a disaster because I went from going from French school to Blackrock to French school to Anglo-American school in France. It was just like a disaster. I didn't know what language to speak, and even today. But the first year I got to France was tough, and then after that I got straight away back into the rhythm. And the last 2-3 years of my scholarship, then I was pretty good, to the point where it was hard to make a decision because I actually became a pretty good student in the last years of my career. My dad did not want me to stop studying to go and try cycling.
Yeah, how did you have that conversation with your dad about, moving forward with your cycling career as opposed to a traditional career that some of the rest of us might have had away from professional sport?
Well, he wasn't quite happy when I told him I was going to pull out of school and not going to university. He wanted me to go at least 2 years. But for me, it was like, no, it was like, I feel I can turn pro next year. And we eventually made some kind of a deal because we looked at different options with school, and the problem with cycling, there was just so much time away. So I was like, I would do something online or really or something very, very specific, but I couldn't go to whatever university because I'd be missing out every Friday or every Monday coming back from a race. So I said, all right, I'll take a year off, and I promise you I'll be pro at the end of the year. And if I'm not, I'll go back to school.
That was a big promise to make, wasn't it?
It was a big promise because I basically just had one shot. Looking back, I think that I would have been supported one more year because I was still very young. But anyway, I think, looking back, I've no regrets. It was part of the challenge, and I was confident enough that I had what it took to make it in the pro ranks.
And what was it like cycling in Ireland as a youth rider under 18 versus cycling in France? Was it very different?
Well, under 18, I've only done just the junior tour basically because I was already based in France since I was 15. So, but yeah, I mean, I always remember the first time I came back to Ireland, I had a massive fight with the federation, just because I was racing in France. I had won most of the races in France, and I wanted to ride the junior tour with the Irish national team. So I called the coach at the time and I said, I want to ride with the national team, the junior tour. And they says, well, you're not racing in Ireland and we don't know how good you are. I says, yeah, but I'm winning everybody race in France. I'm good enough to be on the national team. I said, we won't take you. So they didn't take me. And I came with two friends to help me out. And I finished fourth overall, beating most of the Irish guys. So I was kind of proud of myself. The year after, obviously, they called me and said, Nick, are you doing it on the Irish team? I said, nope. And I'm coming with the same two friends and I'm going to win it. And I came back and won 2 stages, won the mountains jersey, I think maybe the points jersey, and then the overall. So, but that was the thing. It was never made easy.
And what was the catalyst then to deciding to pursue a professional career in cycling? You obviously had some great results as a young rider. So what was the final decision to make that jump into the pro ranks?
Well, obviously, when when a team gives you a pro contract, it's not you don't decide to be pro. Somebody else decides for you. You decide to give it a chance. And after a couple of months, and that second year under 23, Cofidis asked me to go and do a training camp with them. Then they gave me a stagiere's job, and then I finished actually even 10th on one of my first months in the professional rank, and I signed a contract that evening.
And when you turned pro, was there a big expectation that, and I'm sure this question has been asked a million times, but that you would follow in your father's footsteps and go try and emulate what he had done for cycling in Ireland?
Well, not only in Ireland, everywhere, but that was always going to be clear, regardless of whatever I did. And you know what? I realized as a young age, when I played rugby, I was always Stephen Roche's son. When I ran, I was Stephen Roche's son. When I played, so it had nothing to do with just cycling on its own. In cycling, the only thing is, as a kid, when I was good, it was because of my dad, not because of me. And then as a professional, it was hard because my dad was good young, and I was good, but I was good for my age, but I wasn't a superstar. So it was like, I was a promising young professional, but I wasn't dominating the world professional racing after 1 or 2 years like my dad did. So obviously it was very easy to disappoint and not reach the expectations, because everyone saw, he's good. He's going to be definitely as good as his dad, but no.
Okay, so how do you deal with that then?
You get on with it.
That's it. You just get on with it.
If I wasn't capable of dealing it, I would have gone to an office job. So Once I make the decision of riding a bike, I got to get on with it.
And then lining up for your very first professional race, take me back to that day and what that felt like.
No idea.
I can't remember.
No, that's 1,300 races ago.
1,300 races?
Yeah, I've done 1,280 pro races.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
And do you get nervous? Do you get nervous before a race?
Yeah, the odd time.
And how do you deal with those nerves? Like, have you particular things to deal with them? Have you mantras or particular routines that would help you to release some of the nervous energy?
No, music. It's part of the job. You just if you want to make it to pro level, this is what it takes. You need to be able to cope with stress. And I know today it's a real modern thing, because I've had a lot of discussions with the teams today, where I was brought up in a very, very competitive environment, always. And 10 years ago, there was no such thing as not being hard on someone. So I was always push. Today in teams, they're kind of changing a little bit the strategies, and it's more about making them feel good and giving a tap on the shoulder, where that drives me nuts. And I've had quite some arguments with some of my managers last year in the team, for example, where the management techniques are obviously a lot more, friendlier and softer, and then not pushing some of the guys. But if you want to get 100%, you can't always say it's good, you'll progress, because at some point, you're actually lying to yourself, because at the end of the year, you don't want to keep him. Where you want to push the guy and make them work on the stress. Well, anyway, that was how I was brought up. And when I was a kid, we just had to perform, and that was it. If you want to be a team leader, you just have to, it's part of the job. Team leader means having the stress of the team, having the stress to perform, having responsibilities. Where today you're not a team leader anymore. You're just like the strongest rider, and your personality doesn't have to cope with having the responsibilities and whatever. And you see some of the riders, they have breakdowns, but I'm kind of saying, like, bloody wake up, but that was my personality. And that's maybe why I lasted so long and why I wanted to go forward, because I performed under pressure. And I felt that if I didn't have the pressure to perform, I would never give as much by telling me, Nico, give it your best. No, it had to be, Nico, go for it.
And do you think our riders gone soft? Like, do you think as a generation coming up behind us that they're gone soft as well, that we've mollycoddled them, there's instant gratification,
I don't think gone soft is the correct word, because it still is a very, very difficult job. You still have to put the hours, you still have to be extremely focused more than ever. The sacrifices are more than ever. It's just the psychological side of things is softer, but they're not gone soft. You still have to get the work done. The pressure is there. You have a lot to feedback every single day. There's so many different platforms. You have to put the hours of sleep, what you ate, what you drank. It's a lot more complex than just training. So there's more external pressure than a couple of years back, for example. But I feel it's just the psychological side, or the management of their person. You just can't tell someone to come on, wake up, like get together, it's like you'd almost offend them. It's like, oh no, like you have to be a bit more careful. But I think that's generally speaking in today's society. In every job before you get, whipping the bottom, and it's like, come on, like wake up. Where today you can't do that. They'll sue you for harassment or whatever. So
you can't even say the word bottom, Nico. You can't even say the word bottom now.
No, exactly. Yeah, you get sued for sexual harassment. So it's like, right. So, it's like the other day I was doing an interview with RTE, and the thing was about, and I said, oh yeah, I do that when I'm drunk at a friend's wedding. It's like, oh no, just say late at night. I was like, okay, fair enough, but whatever. But it's just, you have to be extremely careful in whatever you say,
100%. And everything that goes out on social or out on media is there for life. Everything that's written or said or spoken is there for life. Coming back to a more serious question, how do you define success?
Well, success is quite personal. There's two ways of success, or you see it with a performance and recognition from others, or it's more relative and it's achieving your own goals. In cycling, unfortunately, you need both. To be a successful cyclist, you also need to perform for the others, but also reach your own goals and set your own goals high. It's very relative word, because for some people, a success is having a 5-year career. Some others is winning 5 Tour de France.
And in terms of your own success, how much of it do you think has come down to natural talent, hard work, discipline, and obviously the ability to suffer?
Well, I was someone who was very, very dedicated to my job, and I made a lot of sacrifices. And I was definitely talented to start with, but it was about the hard work. And yes, a lot of people saying, "Ah, yeah, you're talented," but what made me stay there for the years was the work, and I had a reputation of someone who was just work. But you need a bit of both to be successful.
And what is it about cycling that you love? Very simple question.
It's a very simple question, but it's also a complex question, because I just like cycling, and cycling brought me an incredible experience, but not only as a sportsman, as an athlete, but also as a human. I've traveled in some of the most remote places in Ivory Coast or in Asia, and seen kids with machine guns, and also slept in some 6-star hotels that I could not afford going to on a holiday. So it's brought me like a huge amount of life experience, and I've seen things, been in places, and some like breathtaking areas on the planet. I've traveled the world I don't know how many times, that I would not have done if I had a different job. But also, without the traveling bit, when you're in a team and you're sitting at the dinner table, you could have 6-7 different nationalities, and it gives you great social skills, because you have to be tolerant, you have to understand, you have to adapt, not also be tolerant with other cultures and means, and it's everyone needs to give in a little bit. So it's quite a journey. On the sporting side, cycling for me was freedom. It reminds me, when there wasn't as much traffic as today, to get out of the house, I took a bike, and wasn't depending on my parents to go and pick me up at my friend's place after school parties or whatever. It was like I could take my bike and do what I wanted and go where I wanted. So that was freedom. And still today, when I go on the bike, I need it. Like, my body just asked me to go on the bike. I don't have to go and do 2 hours in the Wicklow when it's half snowing today. But this morning, my body was saying, I just need to go. And if it's just 2 hours, it's 2 hours. If it's the other day, I did 5, and I just felt I had the time in the day, and I was like, I just wanted to go and continue and just get it all out. I got home and I went for a 2-hour sleep. I was knackered. I hadn't done 5 hours since the nationals, and yet that was 4 hours. So it might have been 2 months, but it's just my body just asked for it. But also in the racing, the adrenaline, the pressure, the wanting to perform, to be the best, or trying to be the best, because I was never the best, but I was trying to be the best. And it's just a combination of everything.
You say you weren't the best, but you were trying to be the best, but you still had an incredible career and some amazing results. If I could ask you to pick the highlight of your career, or the result you're most proud of, maybe they're the same or maybe they're different, what would they be?
I would say the Vuelta 2013, that was a complete success. Looking back, it was also, in my opinion, a real pity because I should have podiumed. So looking back, it's like, that was my chance of a podium and I didn't make it happen. But on the other hand, it was the most exciting 3 weeks of my life. Taking the win on stage one, the jersey a week later, and finally finishing fifth in Madrid. Going through, I've been leading. I was almost every single day in a different jersey, from the points, from the white jersey, and which is the Combine jersey, not the young riders jersey, and the green jersey. I wore the red jersey, stage, whatever. It was good, and I enjoyed it. It was hard racing. I was racing with my heart. Had a strong team with me. So I think that as a whole is an amazing memory.
And would that be the result you're most proud of as well? I
think so.
Yeah. It's incredible. And listening to you now, you can just feel the passion for the sport that you have, whether it's you talk about your team, you talk about the culture, you talk about the people that you've met. I want to ask you just a quick question about the teams. You went from different teams for different reasons, and there was a variety of teams over your career. Was it difficult to settle into a new team every time? Was it hard to embrace the different types of team culture or meet the new people? Because I imagine that's a very difficult part of your job as well, that you're moving between teams, you're working with different people, getting to know different personalities. You might have been competing against them in a race the previous year. Now they're your teammates that you're riding with. Is that a difficult part of the job?
I found the most difficult part is making people understand you. I was brought up international school. I lived a little bit everywhere. So for me, it was always easy to get on with someone at like first instinct, where with the hard bit was, it doesn't always work that way on the receiving side. And for me, the hard bit was making people understand my personality, because it's quite complex. I could be very, very strict. I have a cold sense of humor, but I could also be very outgoing. And it's ups and downs, because I'm very passionate about what I do, in the good and the bad. And because I have this passion in me, it also creates frustration. Sometimes I react in a different way to frustration, or to not performing the way I wanted when I kind of gets in me. So the difficult bit was not always me fitting in, was about how do I make the others understand how I am. Okay, so how did you go about that then? Time. Yeah, time. You just also have to talk and explain, and it's always about respect, and it's I've been always very sharp in my comments, and sometimes people are offended, and it's just you just have to make them understand that it's not an offense. It's literally speaking. What I'm saying is, maybe I'm not a politician, so when I go straight to the point, it's straight to the point, and sometimes it can hurt, but it's for my good, for his good, or whatever. And then it's just about making sure that he understands that what I say, it's a comment to move on, and it's not against the person itself. I'm talking about, if something goes wrong in a race or whatever, and I'd be giving out, that it's not personal. It's about growing as a team and going, especially when I was a road captain, I was fighting all the time, because with myself, my own frustration, with others, but it's about putting a point. Sometimes I was very hard on my point, and like I said, now you have to be very, very careful what you say and how you say it. But if you say something hard and afterwards you give him a tap on the shoulder and make sure he understands that it wasn't against him, it's against what happened during the race and that scenario, so we don't repeat it the next time, and make him understand that you like him as a guy. It's just whatever happened during the race is a very, very set example and is not a generality. So these are the things that you have to learn to manage. When I was younger, obviously, I got myself many times in trouble, and I had to learn to manage that over the years. I was one of the older me. And was the leadership role something that you enjoyed, and the team captain role? So leadership role was something I really enjoyed. The road captain as well. There were different moments in my career, but I enjoyed one as much as the other. I want to come back to something you mentioned just a minute ago, and I meant to jump in on it, but it was, you mentioned having traveled the world. Where's your favorite place in the world at the moment, or where's the most favorite place that you've been that you'd love to go back to? It's a difficult one. It's a difficult one, to be honest. I couldn't pick one. Like, for example, like the other days I was here in the Wicklow Mountains, and I just feel like I'm alive, and you just feel some kind of power from the Wicklows, and the wind is there, and it's cold, and your cheeks are burning, and you feel like it's just like just the energy. But then I like Caldes just out of Monaco, and the view is, you could see like 300 kilometers down the coast one way towards France, and you can see 300 kilometers the coast the other way towards Italy, and it's a much milder weather, and the view is just stunning, and it's a sea view. So I can go from the wilderness of the Wicklows to the kind of nice gradual climb on the Monaco hills. So I appreciate a lot of places for different reasons. I cannot really pick up, say, all right, I want to go back to here because I fell in love with that place. No, I fell in love with a lot of places during my career.
It's one of the things, I guess, as a professional rider, that you get the privilege to be able to travel around the world doing what you absolutely love.
Yeah, totally. That was one of the greatest thing about this job, especially when cycling became global, and it took me into China, to Malaysia, Japan, Ivory Coast, Africa. Where else did it take me? Mainly everywhere around Europe, Brazil, America, Canada. So it's kind of quite some countries, all right.
All pre-COVID, thankfully.
Yeah, all pre-COVID, yeah. Well, I mean, Japan this year with the Olympics.
Oh, yes, obviously. Yeah, sorry, I forgot about that. How could I forget? I mean, 4-time Olympian, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's not a part of your career that's spoken about an awful lot, yet you are a 4-time Olympian. Everyone seems to focus on the tours and the success that you've had in racing as part of the teams. But it's quite interesting how we focus a lot on Olympians in Ireland across different sports, but it doesn't seem to come up an awful lot for you, Nico, in my personal opinion now.
No, you're right. And actually, I think it's one of the reasons why I actually put it on today on my Instagram. Well, I mean, today, a couple of weeks ago, when I retired, on my profile, because I think it is something. If I put 24 Grand Tours or whatever it is, it speaks to some, but not to everybody. Where I think 4 times Olympian. There's 2 ways of seeing the Olympics. Today, you can be proud to go to the Olympics, but I didn't get a medal, or which is another step, So it's like, some people is like, oh, you've been to the Olympics, it's huge. And yes, it is. In the world of cycling, I'm also disappointed because I never performed there at the highest level. I think my best result was 25th or 26th in Rio. And the Olympics never went really well for me. I was there, I competed it, I finished them all. Okay, this year I worked for Dan to give him a proper chance. We thought that, that was our kind of last ride, and we just go for it. And it was only fair he was in better shape that I would commit to him and to Eddie Dunbar. So, but the Olympics is not something that, I don't know, that never really came out. So, but also thought, I was like, yeah, but how many actually athletes have done 4 Olympics? So, I mean, getting medals, yeah, it's great. Usain Bolt and Phelps and Pellegrini and whatever, but they're the superstars of global sport. But how many actually athletes, even in smaller countries, have gone to 4 Olympics? Because that's also a sign of longevity. You need to go through all these years of professionalism, of sacrifice and hard work to get there.
And we see how much it takes from an athlete to go to the Olympics once, never mind go 4 times. Can I ask you about the lowest point in your career? We've spoken about the highlights and your performance that you're most proud of, but what was the lowest point in your career?
Well, undoubtedly 2018. That was a kind of year to forget, although the last couple of months were much better. But let's say that the whole spring campaign and fighting with the team and everything, it was like 6 months of nightmare.
And if it's okay to ask you, was that the time when you were going through your divorce as well? Was that affecting your performance? And
yeah, I wasn't sleeping at night.
Yeah, it must have been a huge roller coaster for you, having to keep up this persona in public, yet have all this personal turmoil behind the scenes.
Yeah, and I was trying to keep it as much quiet as possible. Maybe now I'm regretting because I should have made it public, but I was trying not to find excuses for myself. I thought I was stronger than everything, and I had been through split ups and separations before with ex relationships, but this was a divorce. I had this feeling of losing my house after not even a year. I had only slept I think not even 2 months in it, I felt, this kind of injustice, frustration, and that was kind of eating me in.
Yeah, I can't imagine how difficult that was for you. How do you pick yourself back up from something like that, Nico? From something that's affecting you in your personal life, or maybe something like an injury or a DNF after a race that really affects you emotionally and mentally and potentially physically as well. How do you pick yourself back up off the ground and get on with life again?
Well, it's there's no choice, and some people have easier recoveries than others, but it's the process of saying that it's going to get better. And for some it takes weeks, for some it takes months, so some it takes years. But it's about getting the mindset of saying, this is not who I am, this is not what I want to be. I got to pick myself up. There's nothing I can do about it. The house gone, the divorce gone, the injury is behind me, whatever the problem is. And it's about saying, well, now I can't do anything. There's no point of me just digging my grave. I just need to get up and go for it, which is easier said than done. I had to go through counseling. It wasn't easy. Lucky enough, I had at that time, I needed my friends and family, and they were all there for me. And they were always believing that I could make it back at the top level. So they pushed me, they helped me. I went on training camps with some of my good friends, not even cyclists, just friends that were willing to take weekends off to go with me in the Alps and spend time with me in the Alps and just helped me to get back on track. And I've always been very grateful for those 6-7 months I was having a hard time, to the people who were close to me, because once in my life I really needed them, and they were there. And I think that's very important. And I consider myself lucky because I can relate to people who are alone or in a really dark zone and isolated. It's harder again. I was lucky enough that around me people still believed in me and really pushed me, because some people, when I was looking for teams, they were telling me, I was 34 at the time. You're old, you're finished, and I was like, no. And because I never said about the divorce and my brother's cancer, because they were together. And it was all about, the second cancer of my brother. And it was just like, because I kind of never really talked about it. Everyone was saying, he's just done. That's it. He's done his career, and he's done 14 years or whatever it was. So that was already long enough career. But I also had this thing of saying, no. It's just, I just need to get my head right. And believe me, I'll come back. I just need a fresh start.
Two things you say there that strike a chord are the importance of your support group away from your team and your cycling life, that you had your friends and family that could come to your aid to support you when you needed them, and that you were willing to fight to come back, to prove that you weren't done, like that you had the guts and the wherewithal to actually say, no guys, I am coming back and I will be back on top. That's not something that's taken for granted or that's easy for a lot of people to do.
No, it's not. And once again, I think part of my kind of survivor mentality, and 2017 was most likely one of my great years, and 2018 is my worst year. And I was just dying to prove to people that no, I wasn't finished. And no, it wasn't that I had burned myself in 17 and that was it. I was done. It was like I had my issues in my personal life, and I just had to get back together and go for it, because it wasn't about training. I was training, and when I was training, I could perform at a really high level training. It's just when I went to a race, I was just not capable of going deep enough. Like I would literally blow before I blow, if you know what I mean. Like and the Giro, when I had that anxiety attack and I had to stop cycling and I sat on the wall crying, it was just too much for me. But it wasn't physical. It was just a mental issue.
Stress and pressure. And did you ever get homesick when you were away, or did you ever get lonely? I know you have a team, but like they're your competitors and your comrades, but is it lonely? Like, is that an area of something that we never really see, because all we see is the glamour of the professional rider doing well in his career?
It gets lonely. You have very lonely bits. For example, altitude camps, they're tough. You're in isolation. It's long. It's very, very intense. You're usually trying to kind of, work on the weight as well. So you're usually a little bit under fueling, and it's this kind of bad mood kind of thing. And they're tough, they're hard. And for me, the most difficult points were those really long altitude camps. Sometimes you would feel a little bit lonely, especially if there it's also like a lot smaller group. And obviously it's easier when you have a friend you can bond with, and sometimes you're companions, but you're not that intimate with them, and it makes things a little bit harder. But no, it's not always easy. I've also done training camps on my own in isolation for 2 weeks, just because there were extra camps to the team for my own preparation. And sometimes I'd have a friend that would come up just for the weekend, take the weekend, well, maybe take the Friday off and come for 3 or 4 days just for company, to break it up for me. But it's not always easy. It's a lot of time alone.
You mentioned about food there at the altitude camps. Was there always constant pressure regarding food choices and weight? And when you let loose, what would you choose in terms of food and drinks?
Well, I don't know if I should say that on a podcast, but when I had to choose between dessert or a couple of glass of wine, I would always choose a couple of glass of wine, just because I just felt that it was like the satisfaction that it gave me was better than chocolate. And I could, when I even at training camp today, where we do 5 or 6 hours in the evening, I treat myself with a glass of wine, just before going back to the room, and that was like, okay, my satisfaction.
But it's all about balance, though, even
It's
at
all
the
about
top
that
level
balance.
of professional racing.
Yeah.
I want to come back and ask you very quickly, what was your favorite training session and what was your least favorite training session when you were out on the bike?
I don't know. I don't know, because you're the recovery ride. No,
Was that the cake spin?
that's
We'd get
the
on well
cake spin,
together.
yeah. Yeah, exactly. The cake spin. That's great, because it's a social one. The one you have a laugh and have it. No, it all depends on the mood. I find, that there are days where you just, doesn't matter how hard the training is or how intense the training is, and you just want to go for it and just break the bike basically. And there's other days where you're for example, a long easy ride, the fat burning ride, the 6-7 hour rides. Sometimes when you do them alone and you're in there the 6th hour and it just feels like hell and you're just dying to go home and you're starting to be grumpy and tired. And then there's other days at training camp and you do the 7 hour ride and you're with your friends and you're chatting and talking about racing and whatever other stuff you can talk about with them. And the time flies past and you're having a great crack and you actually come home. You did a really, really good training spin, but it kind of flew by. And there's other days where you're a little bit tired and you need to do the intervals and you're just not hitting those watts and it becomes a nightmare more than a training session. So the mood really affects what type of, I don't have I like to do intervals or this or that. It's like, depends on the mood and how the training went. Every training is very, very special and has its own goods and bads. There's days I could go on the whole day on the bike and not feel any lassitude. And there's days after 2 hours, it's like, I want to go home now.
And how important was the relationship with your coach or your coaches throughout your career in terms of managing your training and making sure that you were getting the best from your body and the best from your performance and your talent?
Well, that's been it's been this relationship with coach or like any relationship, there's up and downs, people you get on with better than others. Coaches have become friends, coaches I've never heard of again. It's a mixed relationship, and like I said, sometimes you bond better than with other people. So there's also two different ways of seeing a coach. There's you're same as before. You have to dissociate work and the person, and sometimes as a coach, that the relationship might not be great, but you actually appreciate the person. And sometimes the opposite. Maybe you have no relationship outside of the coaching, but the coaching is really professional and it clicks and it works. So it's a bit like everything. There's always a balance. And like I said, I've coaches from back when I was Saxo Bank. That we text once a month, see how things are, and I go down to see him once a year in Lucca, and we used to have a great relationship. I have some other coaches that I've never heard of ever after again.
Can I ask you a question that probably is going to sound really stupid to you? How much analysis goes on after each race, and just how important are the numbers and the number crunching after a race? Like, do you watch back the races and go through all the data? Now, it's probably a real stupid question, but like, what level of, I suppose, analysis goes into each race and each performance?
On my side, I'm not crazy about it, but I look at it. Well, DSM have a data analysis. That's his job. And he does that to break it up for the coach. So more than the coach, there's a guy whose job is just to go through data, and then comes up with the feedback, and then the coach analyzes a more simplified version and then works on the training. But there are in DSM has a data analyst. So very seriously.
Coming back to talking to you about being a leader, and a leader in your career and in sport, and most definitely a leader and inspiration in the sport of cycling. There's lots of young riders, and indeed more experienced riders, have been motivated by your success. How important is it for you now to give back to your community and to help develop cycling and nurture young talent coming through in Ireland?
Well, I'm keeping a close relationship with a lot of people in cycling Ireland, and with Tommy Evans, for example, and he's asked me if I was ready to give a hand to the under-23s this year, and I would commit to some of the races and try and help as much as I can. Also, like I said, with Trinity Sport Management, which has a couple of Irish guys in the team, I'll be with the young guys and kind of helping out as much as possible and giving back.
And do you see yourself going down a coaching route in the future? Like, is that something that you'd be fairly interested in, or would you prefer to stay on the business side of cycling?
I don't think I'd be made for coaching, just because today I would be a great coach for someone who is not trying to be, or someone who is trying to be professional or cycling. But to be coaching in a professional team, you have to be an IT guy, not a coach anymore. So I would come up and I would train you the way I trained, with what my own experience. But today, it's not about just giving exercises. It's about, like I said, all this data analysis and algorithms, and it's IT job. It's not. The coaches today have changed completely. There's very, very few professionals who are coaches like before. That's not good enough anymore. Now you need all these IT guys, and it's all about algorithms, studying TSS, intensity scores, and that's the way they calculate form. Where for me, I would give a 3-month program, and we'd work on it, and we'd update it every week or every 2 days if you needed to, but it will still be relative to some kind of a feeling. I wouldn't go and study algorithms.
That's interesting that you mention feeling rather than data.
Well, you need both. Don't get me wrong. And like I said to you, I've always spent a lot of time looking at my own data. You need both, but now it's an excess of algorithms.
you almost need a degree in, dealing with some of the data. There's probably will be cycling. Yeah.
You do, and there is a degree now. To be a coach, you need to go through all these techniques. Yeah.
More and more people are taking up the sport of cycling here and abroad. What would you say to someone looking to get into the sport of cycling with aspirations to becoming the next great Irish rider?
How old is he?
Just general.
General.
Take it back to your own age group when you started out.
It's a tough one because once again, I mean, today, and that's one of the conversation I had with Tommy Evans, to go back to that, who's in charge of all the young riders today. And, he was once again saying, we don't want to push the guys too much to go abroad and this and that. But unfortunately, when you are in Ireland, you don't have a choice. And even with the UK, like, it's the same. You need to travel abroad. You need to go to the continent. And it's a hard step, and it's the same. It's like, but the kids, they get homesick. So, yeah, but if they get homesick after a couple of weeks on the road, they just cannot go through a career. So there's no point dreaming of being professional if you miss your mommy after 2 weeks on the road. And as hard as it sounds, it's the same. And that was me. Maybe I'm too hard, and that's why I won't go into coaching. But this overprotective side that's come today in the business, for me, is not to date. Because you see riders who are turning pro at 19. So at 19, if you're afraid to go on the continent, to go and give it a try, well, there's no business in professional cycling for you. It's better to try something else and not lose time. Unfortunately, there's no point chasing dreams. And you see a lot of riders, they're 25, 26 and still going to abroad in the summer or trying it a month or two, but it's just too late now. Unless you want to do it for the crack, which is great because it gives you the same experience and you're traveling, you're with the mates, you're living the cycling life. But today, if you want to make it as a professional cyclist, you have to be ready at a very young age, but ready as in everything, as in ready to go abroad, to make the sacrifices, and there's no holding back. And you just have to hope that you're good enough and strong enough to last through the years, or else it's just not going to work.
There's a huge amount of maturity required at that age to go forward.
Maturity, and also ready to take the risk. Because, for example, that year I took off work or studying to go and try and turn professional. I could have missed out on university. I could have missed out on many other things, on job opportunities. So it's a gamble you have to take, and you have to believe in yourself and try it and not have any regrets about it. But it's something you need to plan. You can't just invent it. And, when you feel you're getting to the level where, obviously you need to be dominating the races in Ireland. If you're not already dominating the races in Ireland, there's no point going abroad. And that should be the start. There's no point putting a dream in your head and thinking that maybe it's like, start winning in Ireland, start hammering everybody here on your local club, and then make it by steps. But there's no point dreaming big or that big, because you're only living with an illusion.
Taking it away from the competitive sport, Nico, we see there is a big, huge cycling boom, not only in Ireland, but across the world. But what can we do to encourage more people to get on their bikes? And where do you see the future of cycling in Ireland generally?
Well, cycling in Ireland is growing and is growing for the last decade. And today, cycling, I think, the bike to work is something that is also an extra step into the world of cycling. People now are conscious about energy saving, about the planet going green. They've got an e-bike because they want to try it, and then suddenly they like it, so they get a normal bike for the weekend. Could be a mountain bike, a gravel bike, or a road bike, whatever it is. But that's the way to go. And I think, even with COVID, when you had the 2K radius or 5K in Ireland for a bit, and the same people just said, all right, running is very traumatizing. If you start, you overdo it, sore ankles, sore knees, and the tendons are sore, and lower back. And that's my own personal experience when I go for a run. But cycling is less traumatizing. You see it, you can go further. When you run for 30 minutes, you're only going around the block. When you cycle for an hour, you go a little bit further, see a bit more things. And now with an e-bike, there's no limits to where you can go. You just have to decide how much pain you want to inflict yourself, basically. So I think, as a general rule, with the technology of the e-bike, the kind of green conscience, energy conscience, and bike to work and all that's already going forward. There's not much more you can add to that. That's already a massive step at the moment that is going ahead.
And I think there's a big interest as well in going off-road, because there's so much traffic on the road now versus when maybe you were younger riding in Ireland, that there's a lot of people taking up mountain biking or gravel bike. And I was announcing a cyclocross race for the very first time in Westport. It was brilliant. And on days where maybe you mightn't want to go out on your road bike because it's icy or it's wet, going out on a gravel bike or a mountain bike or doing a bit of cyclocross is a great alternative. I am conscious that I have been talking to you for almost an hour, but we did have a huge amount of audience questions. So I'm going to do a rapid fire round of audience questions with you, Nico, if that's okay. John Caniff asks, describe your best career day where everything clicked.
2011, when I won the stage in Beijing.
My mum, Joan, asks, how did you have the time or energy to write those articles in the Irish Independent after a hard day's racing? Oh, and when are you coming to Galway to visit? She has the kettle on.
I love Galway. I go quite a lot to Salt Hill. There's just after Salt Hill, there's a restaurant called O'Grady's on the Pier. I just love it there.
Nico, I live around the corner from O'Grady's on the Pier. We have to arrange a cycling date.
So they don't know I love it, but I've been there at least 6 or 7 times in the last 5 years. It's one of my go-to-go places. I just love to escape down there, and I make myself very discreet. Do you know what? The diary was a very, very big chunk of my career. I loved the diary. It united me with the Irish public. It was something that was just initially, because then it went online and everything, and more people could subscribe to it. But initially, it was just me and Ireland, and I love to have that relationship. And you know what? It was a therapy. And my first articles in the diary were very, very fiery, because I just literally got in the bus and while the others were showering, I would just do my diary and then go and shower. And it was where afterwards I had to kind of learn to go for a shower first and then do the diaries. But anyway, at the time, like I said, I got away with a lot of more things that I would get away today. But it was my therapy. I was just like, okay, the day's done. I just need to let it all out.
And I guess it's a bit like journaling. It's a bit like what people are encouraged to do now, is to write diaries and to journal their day to, set themselves up for success and reflect on the day that they've had and, set up their goals for the day after. Pádraig Murray quickly mentions about the changing lanes from being a classic sprinter type rider to a GC contender.
I guess 2008, I lost a bit of weight and I had an ulcer just before the tour, and I lost that extra almost 2 kilos from those 5-6 days in hospital. And when I recovered from that, I felt that, oh wow, I'm actually like that 2 kilos. I was like, I'm actually climbing really, really well. And then the Vuelta 2012, where I was 2008, sorry, when I was 12th in my first go in the Grand Tour, said, all right, I want to focus on Grand Tour. Mistake, not mistake. I don't know, looking back, is like, maybe should I have been a classic rider or not, because I had the physical capabilities of doing it. But mentally, I just love the stress of just every day going for it.
Do you thrive on stress?
I do, yeah.
Okay. Paul Lafford on Twitter says, Nico did some testing with ESC Live, e-scooter live recently. What was it like? It looks like deadly fun. It's
deadly fun. I really, really love their project. They approached me. I'm good friends with Bradley Smith, ex-Superbike driver and MotoGP driver. And when I announced my retirement, he is developing the project. And he asked me if I'd been interested to go and give it a go. I love their idea. It's eco-friendly. The chassis are aluminium, but the rest is from a vegetable. I can't say carbon, but it's a vegetable material, so that they mold it together as like roots. So it's green. It's sports gender friendly. We race with the women. The women being lighter have an advantage because there's very little torque on the electric scooters. So it's fun. It's cross-country background. When we did the races, we had a snowboarder, BMX guy, the motorbike boys and women, and it's generally fun. It's really, really fast. Like you go up to 100k an hour. So that's why we have the full motorbike protections. But it's a project that I'm really backing. I don't know if I'll do more racing, but I did the testing with them this winter, gave them a lot of feedback, tried to help them with the promotion, because I believe it's kind of one of the sports of the future.
Brilliant. And Paul actually does say, enjoy the retirement, Nico. The races won't be the same without you. Emer McNichols, you probably saw this on Twitter, asks, can he run and swim fast? And when are you planning to do your first Ironman? Now, Oliver Harkin also asked the same question, because there's a couple of ex-pro cyclists have turned their hand to age group Ironman racing, or the likes of Cameron Worth, who was a pro rider turned Ironman athlete. Mark Willoughby asked the same question. We had loads of them. So one, we know you can run. Yeah. We know you don't like swimming. But Is there a triathlon in your future?
No.
Definitely not.
Never say never, but it's not down the pipelines. It's not something... I love triathlon and I appreciate the dedication and the hard work in triathlon, but I just want to get over the swimming. Duathlon, maybe, but triathlon, no. The swimming, I have this competitive edge and I just wouldn't be ready to go and put the effort to be good at swimming. Or better at swimming.
It would probably frustrate the hell out of you.
It does, and I've tried it. When I did rehab for my knee a couple of years ago, had a lot of swimming, and not that I overdosed it, but it was like, no, there's a lot of other sports where I can say, all right, I'm handy at. Where swimming, it was just not clicking, and I was getting very frustrated with my breathing, and so triathlon, no. I love the sport. Actually, my shop in Cork is a triathlon store. So I'm very fond of triathlon, but I will not participate in a triathlon. Not in the immediate plans anyway.
Okay. What about some long distance endurance racing? Seen as though you come from a multi-day, 3-week background.
But that is something I've thought of. I've thought of that. I've thought of gravel. I've thought of mountain bike. I will also do Grand Fondos, but yeah, on a bike.
Okay, well, maybe watch this space. There's lots of long distance multi-day endurance races cropping up all around the country. So I have a couple of questions from Robson Lindberg, who was a previous guest of the podcast. He is an Ironman announcer with me, but he's based in Finland, and he's had a massive brain injuries that he's recovering from. So his quick questions are, do you have any superstitions or routines before a race?
No.
Do you listen to music or something while on the turbo trainer?
Always.
What do you listen to?
Very mixed, depending on my humor. I could listen to upbeat, like modern house, pop, something you'd put on the radio, or something a little bit more deeper house just to get the motivation, just the beats, like gym exercise work. I could go into my 80s, noughties, 2000s. Reggaeton I get quickly bored of listening to the same type of music, so I need the change.
Brilliant. And then he also says, while chasing marginal gains, how much does the bike or equipment play a difference?
Well, today they play a big difference. The thing is, all the teams are catching up in terms of bike and equipment. There is no slow bike today in the peloton, so like everyone's worked on the marginal gains in terms of equipment, especially the bike, the tires, the tire pressure. There's so much study that goes into that. But like I said, most teams now are up to date or as good as it can be.
Patrick Crean on Instagram asked, is there another book coming out?
I hope so. It's something that I want to do, because I think it would be a much more mature book and a more important book, because the first book was great. It was my introduction to the cycling world, my first few years starting to be a leader, where the second part is proper living the whole career and, you know, being in some of the best teams on the planet. I've just so many more stories to go through.
Brilliant. And I'm sure there are plenty of stories to be told. Another one for you. Have you ever done the Ross?
Nope.
Is that on the bucket list?
It's on the bucket list, yeah.
Ooh,
I'll do that with all wheelers, but I'll wait to be vet. I don't want to do it now. I'll give myself another year or two.
Dermot asks, why did you aim for Grand Tour wins and not the classics like the Paris-Roubaix?
I was never attracted to the races. Yeah, I don't think I never even started a Paris-Roubaix in my whole career. I just, it didn't do it for me. I watched it on TV and stuff, but it's just, I didn't feel attracted to the race. I preferred the vibes of the Grand Tour.
Okay. Edora Helly says, the best place to cycle around London other than Richmond Park. I don't know if that's something to do with Zwift.
Yeah, most likely.
Do you like those hills in London?
Yeah, yeah, it's not so bad.
3 more questions and then I promise we're done. What was the greatest piece of advice you ever received during your career?
Oh, I got a lot of advice through my career. The best piece? Well, one of the things I guess it's more when I was racing. It was about Tori Schuft. When I was a lead out man for him, I used to always look back, and he was like, just never talk back. You do your job, and my job is to be with you. And that was something that so probably the advice that I've used the most to give to others during my career.
Who has had the biggest impact or influence on your career?
That's also a very difficult one.
Everyone struggles with that question.
Yeah. You know, in some sports you have like a mentor or whatever. I was a sports fan, but I never had one particular fan of. So I'd watch race and during the race, I would appreciate someone's performance, but the next race I'd appreciate somebody else's performance. I never took part in saying, I was a fan of whatever Ulrich or Pantani or whatever you can think of, especially in those years. So I never had a mentor. I don't know. It's I don't think one name particularly comes up. The person who was capable of pushing the most out of me was Bjorn Ries. He always intimidated me. And when he was at a bike race, I always felt that I wanted to show him that I was worthy to be there. And he was like the boss, and you wanted to kind of impress the boss. And I felt that every race he was at, always felt that I wanted to give that bit more to him.
And are you proud of everything you've achieved?
Yeah, and I also think I could have done better.
But you're not going to always think you're going to do better anyway. But like in terms of what you've achieved over a 17-year professional career, it's amazing.
Yeah, I'm you know, like I said, I'm happy with what I've done, how I've done it. It's always questionable how did I make the right choices at some point. And, you know, my biggest regret is not having won a stage in the Tour. Is it due because I was chasing GC for a while and then went into helping others? And then when I actually had a chance to go for stages, I was already in the later years of my career. So I was always getting beaten by somebody else. But then it's the Tour de France, it's the hardest race on the planet. So and the breakaways that I were in were always the breakaways what my brother calls of champions, and it's true. Every breakaway I've been in the Tour was never a breakaway by chance. It was always with the big guys. And obviously when you're always competing against the best of the best, I got seconds, thirds, fifths and whatever, but it's just to get the win is not as easy as what it seems like.
And my final question for you is, how excited are you for the future and what are you most looking forward to?
real retirement.
Is that not a good few years away yet?
That's a good few years away yet. But 2 months into a cycling retirement, I'm thinking of doing a comeback. It was easier. No, no, I'm at this stage where the future scares me and excites me because everything is just totally new. And it's just about, doing a full reset. And like I said, I've no set plans. I have a lot of things going on, but nothing is one more important than the other. So the next couple of years is going to be a massive transition and then kind of settling into something more stable. But I'm also living it to the full. And, like I said, I've been only 6 days home now in the last 2.5 months and trying to push every door and make the most of every single day.
And did I hear a little rumour that there might be a new Roca Sports coming to Galway?
Yes.
When is that plan going to happen?
Hopefully in the spring, hopefully before May. So in about 5-6 months, but it's work in process. Yeah.
Brilliant. Well, Nico, thank you so much for joining me on the show. It was absolutely brilliant. Such a pleasure chatting to you. You are an absolute legend, and I wish you every success for the future. My mother is so going to love this podcast. She absolutely loves you.
Thanks. All the best.
Thanks for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Don't forget you can get in touch with any feedback or guest suggestions by emailing me on trytalkingsport@gmail.com. I'd love to connect on social media. You can find me on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn and Instagram. Pop by and say hi and let me know what you think of the show. If you are new to Try Talking Sport, please do check out some of our previous episodes. You will be both impressed and inspired by our guests. Finally, be sure to sign up to our new e-zine featuring articles of interest, some great discounts and the inside track on supporting your triathlon and endurance sport journey. Sign up over on the website. It takes 30 seconds and I promise I won't bombard your inbox with emails, just the important fun stuff. Until next time, happy Christmas. Be sure to stay safe, keep smiling and to look for fun and adventure in every day.